Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story talking about Donald Trump's new brand of executive action. And, of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. But that's enough rambling for me. Let's jump in to our daily debate. So obviously, Donald Trump has taken a very different approach this time. What do you see as the key difference in the first few weeks, basically the crucial 90 days, the first 3 months of his presidency? What's the difference this time compared to last time? And I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. I have some of my own, and we're going to get into them, but I want to hear what you have to say. So, our article today comes from our friends over at Real Clear Politics. And I think we need to start by defining what the presidency is, or at least has been. So for a long time, we had a system that enabled the leader to be a strong man. And what I mean by that is not literally a man and not literally strong, but to some degree, a person who had a vision and was willing to implement it. And they had to use these systems in place in order to leverage Congress or the Senate to actually comply with their vision. Now, does that mean that the executive was all powerful? Does that mean that they always got what they wanted? No, but they were able to have a forward-looking perspective, to have a idea larger than the moment, and to actively seek it. And that's not to say that the presidency has not had that since. The great example I'm thinking of is FDR. He had a big vision, and he was able to cudgel the Senate and the House for the most part. There were obviously some resistors, and obviously there were a majority of his party were in place, so there's nuance there. But even think of the JFKs, the Nixons, the Reagans, so on and so forth. And then you get into an era where Clinton is forced to work across the aisle. He's in a position where he does not necessarily have a majority. He can't just get whatever he wants passed. And you have the same thing with Bush, who has some of a majority, especially after 9/11, but even then there's some resistance. And then you get into the Obama, the Biden, and even the first Trump era. All of these last ones that I mentioned are much more participatory. They are a regulation-based administration. They are an executive order state, essentially. And Donald Trump is doing the exact same thing now. But what is this about? Is it about having advisors around him that are creating these regulations? Is it having a network of people that are essentially government employees for life, or at least akin to it, and therefore creating all these regulations and having a wise counsel around him? Or is his put in place in order to enable his vision? Does he put in all of these different communicators, so to speak? Because this article speaks specifically about some of the people that Donald Trump is putting into these positions and how they're effective communicators, and how it's about making sure that his vision, not the vision of these different agencies, not the vision overall, not that they're media trained, but rather that they're effective, they can speak on their feet, and that his vision is implemented across the executive. I think that while there is definitely a lot of executive overreach, or there are possible executive overreaches in a lot of these executive orders, and the way that he's trying to go about using the power of the executive, well, I think that there is a lot of overstepping here, and really saying, Congress, the Senate, hey, you guys just gotta stick with me here. You gotta just do what I want you to do, which is not what the executive is meant to do. It's supposed to be a check on them, and also they're supposed to basically be the power to start and end wars. Maybe national security implications come along with that when it comes to how they can actually use their executive powers. You know, tariffs right now, the Donald Trump tariffs, are all based on fentanyl because he has to have a national security justification in order to actually use the executive order power, in this case because of the law that was passed back in the day. Now, the point being that when you have a system that is reliant on all of these wise people, when it's a council of trusted advisor. It's this, while it sounds very nice, and there is some wisdom to actually dispersing the decision-making process and allowing multiple voices to come in, because if your vision is wrong, just inherently wrong, if your vision is not possible, having these wise advisors around you may tell you a way to get there. They may bring different ideas to the table. These are all good things. But it also leads to what feels like an uncentralized process. And the executive is supposed to be a manager. If we're to put this in business terms, which I think honestly sometimes we should think about these things a little bit differently, because there is no other job like the president. Let's not pretend that. But essentially you are the CEO of an entire administration and a entire country, and you have to be able to juggle different ideas. You have to be able to bring in everything that these other people bring to you, the ideas that are coming out of your different groups, task force that you've created at your company, in this case the different agencies, and you have to be able to filter them, and you have to be able to make sure that they align with your vision if you have a lot of independence in your system. And that is what previous presidents would do. There's a lot of independence. They had a general idea, hey, we need to improve the lives of the American people. Ideas would come in. Regulators who have spent years in these different agencies, they have lots of expertise, say, oh, I've had this idea for a long time. Let's actually implement it. We'll run it by Obama. Is this a good idea? We'll run it by Bush. Is this a good idea? And then sometimes if you don't have a strong enough executive, they're not able to filter out what doesn't fit into the vision. Well, Donald Trump is taking a different approach, which is he has the overall vision, he has the implementation, and he's not exactly saying, hey, this is exactly how we're going to do it, because he doesn't know government as well as some people do. He has trusted enough people around him to actually appoint personas that will directly implement his vision alone, rather than come in with years of experience in these different areas. They have some experience. Tulsi Gabbard's a great example. She has some experience, especially with her military service, being on different select committees while she was in office, but that doesn't mean that she has the years of experience of thinking like a national security advisor or a information, basically an intelligence agency operative. Or you have Pete Hegseth, who was in the military. He had a nonprofit for a little bit, fighting for our veterans, but he hasn't had the time inside the Department of Defense in order to be entrenched and therefore have the exact same understanding of all the processes. But he's an effective communicator. He is willing to comply with Donald Trump's vision, and Donald Trump is putting in people that can talk about what his vision is, talk about why they're doing what they're doing, and also are willing to follow along in his footsteps, rather than be able to, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, to be able to run their own program themselves. Not saying they can't. What I'm saying is they would rather defer to Trump's judgment than rather take up their own initiatives. So it keeps the message coherent. It keeps the ideas concise. It keeps everything in lockstep, which doesn't necessarily feel like a bad thing. It kind of feels refreshing after a long time of a bureaucratic system that is constantly working in order to, I don't want to say limit freedoms, but to directly interfere in people's lives more and more. And here's a quote that I think actually summarizes what it's like having these sort of new people in this new Trump presidency. Because obviously there are some exceptions to all of these rules, but the fact that we could see a dramatic change from Trump 1, when he was trying to take the normal route, he used party apparatchiks in order to actually staff his administration. And this time, that means that he's actually learned something here. And I think this author actually hit something very important with this last paragraph in the article. Quote, Trump's second term will be a fundamentally different one from his first, though the appointees of Hegseth, Patel, so Kash Patel, Gabbard, and others, Trump is establishing a system of communication that will facilitate his command of the executive branch and the country. By replacing resistors with transistors, highly capable communicators of his energy, ideas, goals, and politics, Trump will project his vision and his achievement to the world. It's what the American people voted for on November 5th, end quote. And though there has been talk of this strong man idea, Donald Trump is a strong man, and how he's possibly an authoritarian, and that he's overly willing to put the power in the executive. I think he's overly willing to use the power that has been put in the executive, and he's trying to overreach in some places in order to put more power in the executive. There's no doubt about that. But we've also lived in executive order administration for a long time because presidents feel as though they need to get things done, and that Congress and the Senate are not actually doing their job. So the door has been opened by plenty of other people, and Donald Trump is just deciding to walk through it. And is that necessarily right? No, I'm not going to pretend as though that he should sit there and say, you know what, we're going to use all of this executive power, and we're going to end around all of these different agencies and these different checks on me, essentially. But to deny that the American people want someone who has a vision, who will lead them, is not led by them necessarily. He's not sitting there saying, oh, what do the polls say? No, he has a vision, whether it's popular or unpopular. He at least mentions it, he tests it out, he likes it, and he follows through with a lot of it. That is what the American people are looking for, and that's some of the fundamental change that you'll see. Communicators for his idea is the main point the author's making, and I think it's actually a crucial one, and it really defines what I'm seeing and what probably you're seeing in the first 18 days at this point of release of Donald Trump's presidency. So, with all that, let's jump into our daily delight. I think we covered that one. If you want to check out the article, it's in the link in the description below, that like and subscribe button, so you can read the entire thing. But this article comes from thetrek.co, and the headline reads, Fogged Animals and Foggy roads and farm animals. Goodness gracious. And it's an adorable one about a trekker going out and saying hi to the different animals on the path. Honestly, it's a cute article. It'll also be linked in the description, so go check it out if you want a little bit of a smile before you go into work, or, considering this gets done at midday, while you're listening to us at lunch. So, also in the description, you can find the link to the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to both these videos and the 6 and 6 videos that come out on Tuesday and Thursday, which is international news. It's 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.